Welcome to Managing the PSCM Process. This is our third module in our free 24-module masterclass about the principles of category management and strategic sourcing. If we have a process very similar to the one that I've described, however you split it up, with all those activities and tasks within it, it immediately raises the issue, how should this organisational structure be managed? And one of the things that you notice when you actually look at the practice in organisations is that organisations don't normally allow the function of purchasing and supply chain management to take the role, have responsibility and authority, and always be accountable for all of the activities and tasks within this process. So, as you can see on the next slide, the PSCM process could, in theory, be managed in its entirety by a single function. In practice, this isn't often the case. Normally, you often find that line managers are very heavily involved in the management of segmentation, the building of strategy teams, in the development of business requirements, and often heavily involved in specifying sourcing options, strategically and tactically, and often heavily involved in selecting the suppliers that will be market tested. And also heavily involved in the actual negotiation process when key suppliers are being asked about their final offers. Even more importantly, post-contractually, the line managers, the people managing the production and delivery of goods and or services in the organisation, will have the critical, consistent, permanent interface relationships with the suppliers in the process, who are doing the post-contractual supply of goods and services. And often, the people in the purchasing and supply function are providing a supporting role. So, one of the key things that we find in all organisations is that, if you look at the slide now, so we always find in organisations that there are tensions about role, responsibility, authority and accountability structures. What do we mean by this? Who should be responsible for the sourcing strategies for particular categories of spend? Who should have the budget authority for managing the process? Who should specify requirements and determine the key performance indicators in this process? Who should select the sourcing options for market testing? Who should negotiate with suppliers and manage them post-contractually? And who should be accountable for success and failure? Now, it's obvious when you raise these sorts of questions about RRAA, role, responsibility, authority and accountability, that organisations could take different views about what's appropriate and what's the right way to manage this. And this is why there's often debate about the role of procurement and supply chain management as a function within organisations. It doesn't take anybody very long to realise, when they think about that 8-step process that we've just described, to realise that line managers must be involved. Other functions, HR, legal, IT, marketing and sales, whatever they may be, are bound to have an interest in many of the categories of spend, and particularly those that are strategically important to the delivery of their functional goals and interests, and also to the products and services that the company has to deliver through its line management structure. Given this, there are always tensions. So what's the right answer? Well, as you'll find often in the modules that you're going to take in this environment, we don't often say there is an answer. Part of the learning experience that we want you to have with us is to understand that competence isn't about having the answer, it's about knowing what are the right questions to ask and understanding that there can be different outcomes with different consequences in different circumstances. So a competent person isn't actually somebody who knows the answer is always X, but understands under what circumstances X is the right answer and why Y might be a preferable outcome or answer in a different circumstance. And you can only get that competence by understanding what are the right questions to ask. So on the slide that we've just been talking about, we've asked some questions about who or in what ways role, responsibility, authority and accountability structures should be managed within an organisation. Well, there could be a number of different answers. On the next slide, you can see, we could take a view that at one extreme, all of the pre- and post-contractual sourcing activities that we've just described should be managed through a centralized hierarchy. This means that the purchasing and supply chain management function would be responsible not only for defining who's in the teams and how the categories would be segmented, but also for defining what business requirements were, undertaking the analysis of supply markets, selecting the sourcing options, undertaking market tests, doing the negotiation, and then managing supplier relationships and closing out at the end of the process. It would be their role and responsibility, and nothing externally would be selected or supplied without the sign-off of procurement supply chain management as a function. This is a practical reality. I have seen this occur, but it tends to occur in relatively small organisations where the procurement supply chain management function can be responsible for the delivery of clearly defined and clearly observable supply requirements. The other alternative, if we go back to the slide, the other extreme, number 3 here, is decentralised or fragmentation. Here the PSCM function may or may not set standards for the way in which the strategic sourcing process is managed, but most sourcing is now managed autonomously by divisions and functions. So what do we mean here? Well, what we mean here is that, and this is often the case in very large and complex conglomerate organisations, because the business unit structure is being managed financially as separate business units in highly complex conglomerate organisations, the actual purchasing and supply chain management function acts autonomously or separately within those business units, which themselves act autonomously. So there is no centralised control. There could be some generalised rules that have been generally agreed about procedures and policies, but generally speaking, in a fragmented, decentralised structure, each business unit does its own thing, and within each individual business unit, the role of procurement and supply chain management may be very much a tactical support role, supporting line managers doing the things that they primarily want to see done, where they have a major influence over procurement supply. Now, I'm not saying that this is a worse or less good approach than centralisation. Sometimes the benefits of centralised control of procurement will be outweighed by the benefits of the strategic delivery of the goods and services that a business unit needs to bring to market, and it would be better to focus more on an agile approach to supply market delivery than it is to focus on centralisation. These are choices. The question is, which is the most appropriate for what type of organisation? We will discuss this obviously in a lot more detail, but what's quite interesting, if you now return to the slide, it's in your pack, actually most organisations tend to be hybrids. Part centralised, part decentralised, and often adopting, although they may not know it, what we call a clan or centre-led action network approach. In this type of approach, the PSCM function leads and may take a controlling role in some defined categories of spend, and generally sets standards for the processes and policies that will be pursued by the rest of the organisation. But it's elsewhere in the organisation that the remaining sourcing categories are being managed. In other words, we have a situation in which the procurement supply chain management function may have responsibility directly for some major categories of spend, some minor categories of spend, but because of the importance of line and other general functions like HR, marketing, legal, IT and so on, in those organisations, they also have a major role and control some of the categories within the organisation. And in these cases, it isn't direct procurement staff who are managing the sourcing process, but they're doing it as a support activity or as seconded staff to other organisations like the line or other functions to support the activities and ensure that the policies and procedures that have been decided on at the centre are being properly implemented. In my experience, in most large organisations, public or private, hybrid structures, part centralised, part decentralised, with clan type approach, centre-led area networks tend to be the most common solution to the complexity of large organisations. Now, none of these approaches is in itself the right answer. We'll talk about this in more detail in subsequent modules. All I want to do at this stage is help you understand that there are a range of choices available, three broad choices here between centralised and decentralised with hybrid forms in the middle, that people can choose from for managing the particular circumstances of the organisation that they're in. Okay, and so to conclude this particular discussion of role, responsibility, authority and accountability, there is no one best answer to the RRAA dilemma. Organisations have to decide which is the most effective way of resolving the inevitable tensions that exist between line operations and other functions. But I do want to make a couple of important points before we conclude with this discussion of RRAA. It is inevitable that in all organisations, line managers and other functions, other than procurement and supply chain management, will necessarily have an interest in and a major role to play in the development of strategic sourcing processes and in the decisions that have to be made and the activities and tasks that must be performed in a process. It is therefore incumbent upon all organisations to ensure that the competence of procurement and supply chain management is fully developed within all of the staff in the organisation who have a major and significant impact on the strategic choices and tactical and operational delivery of the strategic sourcing process. It has been my experience that many of the people who should be trained in procurement supply chain management are not necessarily the people who are in the function, and obviously they must be trained to world-class standard if we want to be best in class in this area. But many of the training needs in organisations are primarily for those line managers and general functional managers who are heavily involved in the strategic sourcing process and often overdetermine the specification of requirements, often overdetermine which suppliers will be allowed to be participating in market testing exercises, and overdetermine and select the sourcing options, and then manage the relationships and supplier interfaces post-contractually. If these individuals are not involved in training and competence development associated with good practice in procurement supply chain management, suboptimal decisions will normally occur. And it has been my experience that it is often the suboptimal competence of line managers and general functional managers that leads to serious errors and levels of incompetence in procurement supply chain practice within organisations. Now, that's not to absolve all purchasing and supply chain management functions, because clearly there's major training need in those areas too. But having spent many years training large organisations and their staff, my biggest concern has always been that organisations only seem to train the purchasing people or procurement supply chain people in one group and never ever have any involvement of other functions, line managers involved in the sourcing process in those training and competence development programs. So if you're just doing this and you're only a procurement supply chain management professional, please take the message to others in your organisation that we really need to move beyond this and have them taking these modules too.
Thank you for watching this video, and we do hope you found it of interest and value. A more advanced discussion of the issues is provided in the following reading material, and especially in Sourcing Portfolio Analysis by Andrew Cox. This book is available from www.amazon.co.uk. In the Principles of Category Management and Strategic Sourcing Masterclass, there are 24 modules. These 24 modules are available to view within 5 sections. an introduction module. In Part A, the role of procurement and supply chain management, there are 6 modules. In Part B, world-class and best-in-class category management and strategic sourcing, there are 2 modules. In Part C, the activities and tasks in a world-class category management and strategic sourcing process, there is 1 module. In Part D, the principles of buyer and supplier exchange, there are 14 modules. For those interested in reading more widely about the topics in this masterclass, the following articles and books are recommended. All books are available from Amazon UK. Electronic copies of the slides in this masterclass are available to purchase from IIAPS by contacting info@iiaps.org. This shows a list of practitioner and academic articles about PSCM, category management, and strategic sourcing. This shows a list of books about PSCM, category management, and strategic sourcing. To ensure the successful implementation of the PSCM transformation, IIAPS provides consulting support to embed learning by doing, and also to fast-track desired improvements in performance. Our primary consulting service support is the QV Strategic Sourcing Challenge Workshop. This workshop is always focused on challenging existing real-life category strategies and brings together internal clients who design and specify requirements and the PSCM strategy leads to identify the key demand and supply factors impinging on current value for money performance. The QV report identifies immediate areas for improvements in value for money so the industry-leading quality, cost and delivery outcomes can all be achieved. For further information on the QV Strategic Sourcing Challenge Workshop, please visit www.iiaps.org/services-qv.html. For those interested in operationalising the concepts and methodologies discussed in this masterclass, the following route to accreditation and competence development is available. The International Green, Red and Black Belts in Advanced Purchasing and Supply Management. To obtain full professional membership, MIIAPS, at the International Institute, candidates have to utilise the concept introduced in this masterclass to develop and implement real-life category strategies and explain how this compares to world-class practices. The development of these real-time strategies is based on the application of best practice theory and the most advanced sourcing tools and techniques. Green Belt membership, awarded after successful completion of an initial category sourcing strategy supported by IIAPS staff. Red Belt membership, awarded after unaided satisfactory completion of a second real-life category sourcing strategy. Black Belt membership, awarded after unaided satisfactory completion of a third real-life category sourcing strategy. For further details about studying for these advanced international qualifications, download the brochure at www.iiaps.org/media-brochure.html.